I just saw some, I saw some rushing around and I saw some stress there for a second. Well, thank you all for having me. I'm sorry that I can't be there in person. I'm coming to you from beautiful Logan, Utah, where it is snowing today. We have had an incredible winter and it's still winter here, unfortunately. So coming to Hawaii would be a way to manage my stress around this long winter, but um, sometimes we can't change the circumstances of our lives, and sometimes we just have to handle and manage the lemons that life gives us, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So hopefully today this is going to work. I am going to take a little bit of time here, and I am going to stress you out and give you some information. And if you saw what I did earlier in October, I'm going to do a little review just so that you understand why we are going to do what we're going to do later. And we will end, and I am going to teach you how to laugh. Many of you probably think you know how to laugh. I'm going to hopefully give you some additional skills and techniques that will help you laugh more. So, as I said, I promise we're going to be getting here, but before we get here, we're going to start here, which is talking about stress. And I begin all of my presentations with this, and I get knowing nods from everybody. In the United States today, most people are experiencing chronic pervasive stress. And this is something that has continued to increase over the past 25 years, but it really has reached epidemic levels within the past 5 years. Some of the data that I showed in October was older data. This is newer data from the Americans with the American Psychological Association. And every year they do a Stress in America survey. And what they've shown is that stress levels in the US have continued to rise since the COVID pandemic. 27% of all adults in the US say that on most days they're so stressed they can't function. 46% of adults under the age of 35 said they are so stressed they can't function. So the younger you are, the more stress you're feeling. Around a third of adults report that stress is completely overwhelming on many days. And again, this is something I think that we can all relate to. When we think about what does this look like, 3/4 of adults say that they've experienced health impacts due to stress in the prior month. And that's actually on par with what we know from medical data. In the United States, approximately 70 to 85% of healthcare visits are related to stress-induced conditions or conditions that are exacerbated by stress. And again, these can be anything from headache to fatigue to feeling nervous or anxious or feeling run down, depressed, sad. But also stress suppresses your immune system. It makes you open to infection. And again, if you want more information on that, if you want the science of stress, I'm going to say go watch the October one. I do a lot on that there, but I do want to just set a baseline here and note that we're not supposed to be feeling this level of stress. In the wild, animals don't feel stress on a 24/7 basis. Animals feel stress for a very short period of time. In fact, in the wild, stress is what is called the fight or flight response. And so this monkey, I had another monkey in October. Again, this part of this is a review, I know, for those of you who have seen it. But the stress response is known as the fight or flight response. So when you are feeling stressed, you are feeling the same thing as this monkey that's being attacked by a jaguar. And what happens when this monkey is faced with danger is its body does a whole host of things in order to prepare it for a massive expenditure of energy. So this monkey sees the danger and its brain has to switch very quickly and decide, am I going to fight or am I going to run? And in order to do that, the monkey's body amps up for a huge expenditure of energy. Your body, your heart starts pumping more rapidly. You start breathing more quickly. Your blood pressure goes up. Your cardiovascular system, your nervous system, your endocrine system are all primed to help you stay alive. Unfortunately, when most of us feel stress, that's not actually what happens. We experience the exact same thing as that monkey or the photographers running from the bear when we're sitting at work, when we get in an argument with our spouse, when we get a phone call from our kid's school, when we have a doctor's appointment, when we forget a deadline. All of these things cause stress and cause that same fight or flight response to go on in our body. But instead of running away from your spouse if you get in an argument, I'm going to just tell you right now, is not a appropriate response to stress. Neither is it for work either. You shouldn't do that at work either. So although it is called the fight or flight response, in most cases, the right response is not to run away. But I should state, you just sit there in most cases, right? We take it. We're just like, okay, I just have to get through this. And as a result, it takes a toll on our body. It actually wears us down significantly and causes a whole host of stress-induced conditions. I brought this up in October as well, but again, it's something that I like to revisit. Stress, although it is important, and although we need a little bit of stress in our lives to get through our day, stress is like a Big Mac. Stress, so let's think about a Big Mac. A Big Mac is a remarkable sandwich. I know I've said this before, but the Big Mac, 2 patties with a bun in between, the secret sauce, which I know we'll all admit is just Thousand Island dressing. That's what it is. I know I'm breaking all sorts of patent rules there, I'm sure, by telling you that, but that's what it is. And it's really a damn good sandwich. I like Big Macs. Now, the problem comes, because I like Big Macs, I could eat Big Macs every day. Now, eating a Big Mac once a week is probably not going to be a big deal. But eating a Big Mac every day over time will probably lead to some unfortunate health outcomes. And if I have 3 or 4 Big Macs a day, well, hopefully you've all seen Super Size Me and a bunch of the other documentaries that have come out about eating fast food. It really does bad things to your body. Stress is exactly the same. A little bit's okay. And in fact, a little bit's actually good, just like a Big Mac. But too much over time actually leads to significant health and mental health outcomes that lead us down the path of illness, disease, and unwellness. Now, we live in a culture, unfortunately, where stress has become a status symbol. In the United States today, we feel like we need to be busy all the time. We feel like the most stressed out people are the most important people. In fact, a study that was done a few years ago by researchers in the School of Business at Harvard University, Georgetown, and Columbia, it gathered a whole bunch of participants from across the US, and they presented them with 2 fictional scenarios. One was a hypothetical man called Jeff, who worked long hours. His calendar was always full. He was always busy. He was always running around. And the second scenario presented another version of another man. And unfortunately, they were males. I know it should have been more gender, but the researchers chose to do that. But in the second scenario, it was somebody who didn't work as much and had a leisurely lifestyle. And without reservation, the first scenario seemed realistic, whereas participants said the second scenario seemed like a lovely daydream. And actually, in the report that was published by the Harvard Business Review, the busier person was perceived by participants to have higher status than the one with free time. And this happens to just be the largest study related to this, but you all have probably seen this in your lives, where the people who are busy, who are running around, who are stressed out, who have full calendars, they have a scowl on their face, they don't have time for you, those are important people. Unfortunately, those people are slowly killing themselves and just really are going to end up with some poor long-term health outcomes, as we've learned. And when I say busyness is killing us, I am not actually joking. If you want to know the science behind this, again, I would recommend going to watch the keynote that I did in October that's recorded. You're able to go see that, and I go through all the different impacts on the various body systems. But the busyness that we feel leads to our stress, and the stress is killing us. In fact, Brene Brown, in one of her earlier books called Crazy Busy, she said crazy busy is a great armor. It's a great way for numbing. What a lot of us do is that we stay so busy and so out in front of our life that the truth of how we're feeling and what we really need can't catch up with us. And in fact, we live in a culture that's all about doing and being productive. And we feel like we need to always be busy, always be productive. And as a result, we sacrifice self-care. We sacrifice rest. We sacrifice family time, things that would bring us joy and that would actually help us manage our stress, because somehow we feel like we need to appease some larger force out there. Unfortunately, by constantly being busy, we're being less effective. As you can see in the second quote there, when our self-worth is based on constant doing and proximity to chaos, many other vital aspects of our lives begin to suffer. True focused productivity, which allows us to complete and finish projects successfully, is often replaced with multitasking. And I won't ask you how many of you multitask, but multitasking has been shown to actually elevate stress, because we're doing lots of tasks and we recognize that we're not doing many of them well, but we're doing a lot. And as a result, we again sacrifice quality downtime. Now, this culture of busyness, this culture of stress, leads to, again, elevated stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. And over time, these stress hormones cause our body to break down. And if left unchecked, can lead to burnout, can lead to life-threatening illnesses, and even premature death. And again, I would highly encourage you to go check out the pie chart of death if you're curious how that works. But the fact is, if we choose to ignore stress and its effects on our mental health, it will eventually force you to pay attention to it. We can only put it off so long, but eventually the long-term health outcomes of stress and busyness catch up with us. So the question then becomes, how do some people manage stress so well? Clearly, this isn't everybody. Yes, there's a large proportion of people who struggle with this, but there are people who manage it well. There are people who are healthy. There are people who are happy. What have they figured out that some of the rest of us don't know? Well, there's a few things. The first thing that most of them have figured out is the relaxation response. And whether they know what the relaxation response is or not, they have figured something out that allows them to relax. And so again, I'll do a practice with you here in just a second so you get a sense of what this is. But the relaxation response is based upon research at Harvard Medical School it was done by Herbert Benson, a cardiologist who was studying high blood pressure. And he found that instead of using drugs and other things to lower blood pressure, that we could actually naturally lower our blood pressure by essentially following two basic steps. And those two basic steps were, number one, the repetition of a word, sound, thought, phrase, or muscular activity. And number two, the passive return to that repetition when other thoughts intrude. And what this does is this breaks the train of our everyday thought, and it gets the body to focus on the here and now, and it helps us recenter, refocus, and turn off the stress response. So people are like, okay, I've never heard of this. What are some things that do this? Well, if you look at this repetitive aspect of it, there's many things that have that. Knitting, crocheting, fishing, cooking, exercising, running, rowing, swimming, all of these things, dancing, yoga, anything that has a repetitive element to it can actually induce the relaxation response. That's why many people find them to be so fulfilling, because Yes, some of them are exercise, but they also cause your body to relax. You don't always have to do exercise, though. It could be something as simple as mindfulness meditation. And I know in October we talked about this quite extensively. Mindfulness is just paying attention to the repetition of your breathing, paying attention to your breath coming in and going out. And just paying attention to that repetition, again, shuts off the stress response. It brings us to the here and now, and it helps us recenter, refocus, and get our body back into a state of equilibrium. Now, what happens during the stress response? Again, we have about 50 years of research now on this during the relaxation response. What happens during the relaxation response? 50 years of research from medical schools across the country. But again, over and over and over, we've seen that people who figure this out, their heart rate decreases, their blood pressure decreases, their respiratory rate decreases, their oxygen consumption decreases. Slow brain waves increase. They have a lowered perception of stress, so they're less reactive, and they tend to be just, again, more grounded and just generally happier, more balanced individuals. So there's physical and there's mental health implications for engaging in the relaxation response. Unfortunately, we live in a culture that teaches us what it looks like to be stressed. As I mentioned, stress is a status symbol, and we have plenty of practice and plenty of opportunities to practice getting stressed. But most of us haven't been taught the skills, and many of you probably haven't even heard of the relaxation response until today. And so many of us and many of our kids are not learning these skills at home or in their communities. And so it's very important that we understand these, and then we create opportunities to teach these to people. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work with you really quick here, and we're going to practice. And I'm going to do a really quick relaxation response activity with you. So what I'm going to have you do, and you don't need to worry, you're not going to do anything now. Don't worry, we're going to do the weird stuff in a little bit. But what I want you to do right now is just sit upright in your chair, wherever you're at, put both feet on the floor, both hands in your lap or somewhere where they feel comfortable. If you want to keep them crossed in front of you, you can do that, whatever helps you feel safe. And what I want you to do is take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And take one more deep breath in through your nose and let it go out through your mouth. And then take one more easy deep breath in through your nose and then let it go. Now, we're going to make this a little more advanced. And what I'm going to have you do is we're going to take 3 more deep, easy breaths. But what we're going to do is we're going to breathe in to a count of 5, and then we're going to extend the exhale. And the interesting thing is, if we extend our exhale, if we make that exhale longer than the inhale, it actually causes our body to relax. We can use our breathing, we can use that repetitive motion of our diaphragm to help our body feel safe and feel like it's okay. And so what you're going to do is you're going to breathe in, and then you're going to hold it for a second, and then you're going to let it go. And I will count us through this. So what I want you to do, again, sitting there, breathe in through your nose, 2, 3, 4, 5, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Again, that was a much longer exhale. We'll do it one more time, breathing in, 2, 3, 4, 5, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. One more time, breathe in, 2, 3, 4, 5, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, that exercise there is actually something called the physiologic sigh, and I actually taught that in October. But what we've done there, just in the short 3 breaths, by slowing down your exhales, you told your body that it was safe. You told your body that it was okay to relax, and your body started to shut down any stress that you may be feeling. In fact, many people find that after they do an exercise like that, where the exhale is longer than the inhale, that they feel more centered, more grounded, less anxious. And again, it's something that we need to practice, but something very simple like that will induce the relaxation response. But my purpose here today is not to teach you that. We did that in October, but I wanted to bring that up because that is one component of managing your mental health. Now, there's another component of managing your mental health that I didn't talk about that I think is really important and that comes into play when we talk about laughter. Now, the second component of managing your mental health is being around people who care about you. So you can do everything right. You can eat healthy, you can exercise, you can do mindfulness meditation, and all the things that are going to help you as a person, as an individual, be healthy. But if you're isolated and alone, you're going to continue to struggle. In fact, when we look at stress management statistics and we look at the number one predictor of psychological resilience, that number one predictor of psychological resilience is a reliable social support network. That means having people around you who you feel like care about you and will support you. That is incredibly important to mental health. The reason for this, people are like, well, that's kind of weird. Don't I just need to take care of myself? And yes, that's half of it. But as human beings, we are animals, and we have a primal need to belong. Belonging helps us feel safe. This is why zebras run around in herds. This is why fish school. This is why, most mammals, unless you're a predator, and even a lot of predators run around in groups, but most mammals like to be in groups because there is safety in numbers. It's actually called the social buffering hypothesis. And what we find is that when people are together in groups, they feel safer, they feel more grounded, more centered, and they feel a higher sense of well-being. And in fact, when we look at the long-term statistics, people who have strong social support networks actually live longer, happier, and healthier lives. People who report feeling isolated and excluded and lonely tend to be less happy. They report lower subjective well-being. They struggle with learning. They have lower immune system functions, and they're generally less healthy. And again, this is not just in humans. This research was originally done in animals. And what they would do is they would take herd animals, and they would take one animal from the herd and they would isolate it. And then they would take the blood from that animal and they would look at the hormone levels in the blood of that isolated animal. And that animal that was isolated and on its own, away from the herd, had higher adrenaline, higher cortisol, had stickier blood. It had all the indicators of being stressed. But the minute that animal's allowed to go back and join the herd, those hormones and those indicators of stress disappear from that animal's system. So we are exactly the same. When we're together with people, we feel safe. And that is incredibly important when we come to talk about laughter. Now, before I get to laughter, I do need to disturb you one more time. And you're gonna have to bear with me through this. This is actually this is a field of research that is emerging right now, but is really, really interesting. And people don't seem to recognize how important social connection is. This is why things like inclusion and belonging, when we talk about our kids with disabilities, is so incredibly important. because it's not just a nice thing. It's actually something that benefits a person's physical health. Now, how do we know that it benefits a person's physical health? So there's research going on now, and it actually has gone on in rats and in monkeys over the last about 20 years. And what they've done is they've taken rats, and rats are highly social animals. And they take these rats and they have a litter. And in the control setting, one litter is allowed to stay together with its mother and with its siblings. And then in the treatment setting, once the rats are born, they take them and they isolate them. They put them alone in their own cage where they don't have a chance to interact with other rats. And then what they do is they watch them over time. And they put these rats through a variety of tests. They put them through maze tests, intelligence tests, learning tasks, all sorts of things. I think the thing that upsets most people the most is they actually measure healing in these rats. And so what they'll do is they'll take the rats in both the treatment and the control group, and they'll actually burn their back. They have a little iron and they burn their back. And then every day they take a picture of that burn and count the number of pixels in that picture to see how fast it heals. And the interesting thing, in the rats that live together that are not socially isolated, they heal almost 3 times as fast as the rats that are socially isolated. And in fact, the rats that are socially isolated tend to develop more infections, and actually several of them die as a result of the burns that they receive as part of this treatment. But if we take this as a whole, if we take sort of this research as a whole, what it shows us is that the rats who are socially isolated, they tend to be more neurotic. They tend to perform more slowly on physical and cognitive tasks. They perform less accurately on learning tasks. They have lower life expectancies. They heal more slowly from injury, and they're more prone to infections. And the interesting thing is humans are exactly the same. A person who is socially isolated has a harder time recovering from illness than a person who has a family or a social group that cares about them and supports them. A person who has a social group that cares about them and supports them is able to learn faster and able to retain knowledge more than a person who feels isolated and alone. And in fact, when we look at life expectancies of humans, the humans who tend to live the longest are the humans who are actively engaged in social groups. This is really interesting research with hospice and the aging population. But people who are aging, who are engaged in community activities and organizations, tend to live 10 to 15 years longer than people who are aging, who are socially isolated. So being together with people matters, and it matters a lot. It's like I said, it's not just a nice thing. It has a direct physical impact on your health and your well-being. So now I've depressed you, and you're like, what in the heck does any of this have to do with laughter? Well, let's talk about laughter. So you're going to have to hang with me here because we're going to do a little more science. But why laughter? Well, laughter combines both sides of this wellness recipe. You have the relaxation response. Laughter helps you relax, but laughter also has a strong social component. And when we look at the research on laughter over the past 50 years, it's been universally positive. There's no study that has come out over the last 50 years that says, oh, we should laugh less. In fact, almost all the studies unequivocally say we should be laughing more. They are, as it says in the quote here, there are virtually universal positive results. Unfortunately, we don't laugh enough. In fact, many of us have been trained not to laugh. So I should go back to the beginning. You can study laughter. This is a field. It's a field. The field is called gelotology, G-E-L-O-tology. Gelos is the root word it's the Greek root word for laugh. And so it's actually a legitimate field of study. I learned about laughter when I went to Harvard Medical School. I went to Harvard Medical School back in the early 2000s to do some postdoctoral work on mind-body medicine. And when I was there, we were learning about mindfulness. We were learning about yoga, but they also had a laughter lab. And my experience in that laughter lab changed my life because I recognized that I needed to be laughing more. We all need to be laughing more. In fact, when we look at the research on kids, kids laugh hundreds of times per day, 200 to 500 times per day. Listen to a child. They laugh a lot. It's natural. It's part of being a child. But as we get older, we laugh less and less and less. In fact, most adults in the United States laugh less than 5 to 7 times per day. And in some cases, unfortunately, some people don't laugh for weeks at a time. But the fact is, laughter is healthy, and laughter is something natural that our bodies do to help us manage stress. So the question, though, is what is laughter? Because if laughter is a way to manage stress, then laughter must be something that other animals do as well. And they do. It's hypothesized that laughter is an evolved form of what is called chuffing. And so there are studies on laughter in rats, cats, dogs, monkeys, dolphins, bears, wolves, really any social animal they have studied laughter in. And so I have a picture of bears here. I grew up in Fairbanks, Alaska, and spent a lot of time in the Arctic. I had friends who lived in Barrow, which is the very northernmost city in North America. It's way up on the Arctic Ocean. It's actually not called Barrow anymore. They've gone back to the indigenous name Utkavik. But we would go up to visit my friends in Utkavik. And in the springtime, the Alaska natives who lived there would go out whaling, and they would bring whales back to, they would go out and harpoon whales, and they'd bring them back to the beach, and they would butcher them on the beach. And as a result, it would attract all the polar bears from all around that northern area of Alaska to come in to scavenge the whale carcasses. Now, polar bears are solitary creatures. Polar bears do not live together in groups. Polar bears do not like to be together in groups. In fact, polar bears have one of the largest territory requirements of any predator. Polar bears require hundreds of miles between other bears, but they are willing to flex those bounds when the whales are there in Utkavik. So they'd bring in the whales, they'd butcher them, and they'd leave the bones and the viscera there on the beach. And the polar bears would come into town, and then the tourists would come to town to take pictures of the polar bears feeding on the whales. And when polar bears come across one another, and actually it's not just polar bears, grizzly bears and black bears do this as well. When they encounter another bear, they do one of two things. Now, if they're threatened and if they're feeling aggressive, they're going to open their jaws and they pop the little hinge of their jaws. They make a popping sound and a deep guttural growl. But if they feel safe and they want to communicate that safety to the other bear, they chuff, which is a forceful exhalation. It's huh, huh. And actually, the chuff sounds a little more aggressive than the popping of the jaws. And so people will hear these polar bears chuff. And when one polar bear hears another polar bear chuff, the other one chuffs back, and they say, okay, that's one bear saying, I'm okay with you, and I'm okay with you, it's okay. And they kind of go their way, and we're all very disappointed that there wasn't a big bear fight in the middle of the street. But that chuffing is a way to signal safety. Other animals do this as well. Again, growing up in Alaska, we'd spend a lot of time hunting, and we would go out hunting caribou, and caribou live in large herds. And any herd animal, if you hunt herd animals, they have this where the herd will be eating, and they'll have one animal that's watching for danger, whether that's a hunter or a wolf or a coyote or any predator. And the minute those watch animals hear something or see something that they think is dangerous, they make a high-pitched sound. And with that high-pitched sound, the whole herd lifts their head up and listens and looks around for danger. But then if the danger passes, they chuff. They go, huh, huh. And on that chuff, the whole herd goes back to eating and doing what they do. They relax. So the chuffing helps animals relax. We have exactly the same response. It's actually speculated that laughter is chuffing in humans. And when we hear laughter, we relax. And laughter helps us communicate, cooperate, maintain social bonds, and problem solve as a group. In fact, when laughter spans cultures. You don't need to speak the same language to laugh with somebody and to know that you are safe and that person is okay with you. Laughter is a universal language. So laughter was very, very important on an evolutionary level in helping us as humans learn to get along and work together. But if we look at the science even further, laughter does much more. Laughter promotes cardiovascular health. Blood pressure drops, pulse rate drops. Your heart is much healthier. You end up feeling actually more energized as a result of the laughter. In fact, laughter has been shown to have the same effects as 10 to 15 minutes of cardiovascular activity, of aerobic activity. So you can laugh for 10 to 15 minutes, or you can go run for 10 to 15 minutes. You're going to get the same effects. I argue that laughter is much more fun. The other thing that laughter does is it strengthens your immune system. Stress suppresses your immune system. Laughter strengthens your immune system. It actually increases the number of B cells and T cells and helper T cells and all these cells that help you fight off infection. So when you laugh, your immune system's boosted and you're healthier, you're able to fight off those infections. Again, stress suppresses your immune system and it makes you open to these infections. Laughter releases endorphins, feel-good hormones. These are dopamine, these are serotonin, this is oxytocin. These are naturally manufactured opiates. These are actually the hormones that antidepressants are seeking to impact in your body, because laughter, like exercise, releases these to help us feel good about our lives. It helps us feel happy. It helps us feel centered. It helps us feel hopeful. And laughter decreases the bad hormones, adrenaline and cortisol, that actually are released by the stress response. Laughter also releases oxytocin. Now, oxytocin is called the trust hormone. And oxytocin is the hormone that's released when a mother is nursing her child. Oxytocin is the hormone that's released when you hug somebody for longer than 3 to 5 seconds. Oxytocin is the hormone that helps us get along with people. It's called the trust hormone. And it's a hormone that is really, really important to maintaining social bonds. So when you laugh with somebody, you're literally creating a chemical connection with them. And again, if you have friends and family that you've genuinely laughed with, you probably feel differently about them than you do with people who you haven't laughed with. And the reason for that is you've actually created that chemical connection through the secretion of oxytocin. So essentially, when we look at it, laughter switches on the systems that stress switches off. So what I want to do here at the end is I want to demonstrate that you can't help but laugh. So I have a video here that I'm going to play, and I'm really hoping that the sound works. I'm going to make sure, let's see, optimize for video clip. Okay. And I'm going to play this video, and I'm going to show you a very funny person. Anderson Cooper, right? That's who we all think about when we think about being funny. And, oh no, where'd Anderson Cooper go? Go back. Sorry, let me go. Well, we're doing laughter yoga after Anderson Cooper. Let me show you Anderson Cooper. Hopefully this will work.
Buffalo, the Dingus Day capital of the world.
Can you hear that?
Also the birthplace of the chicken wing, little known fact. They've been celebrating Dingus Day there since the 1800s, but apparently, it really took off in the 1960s.
It caught on because, for a number of reasons. Dingus, first of all, is a funny word. It's spelled with a Y. People don't know what it means.
It's funny because it's spelled with a Y. What does it mean anyway? My new favorite reference spot, that would be dingusdaybuffalo.com, says dingus can be traced back to a medieval word meaning worthy, proper, or suitable. And here's how you celebrate Dingus Day.
The quirky little rituals include boys sprinkling girls that they fancy with water, and the girls striking back with a tap from a pussy willow branch.
I'm not gonna let you do this one. All right. It's so stupid. It's really so stupid. Come on. It's torture. Just gotta let it out. Just gotta let it out.
Okay, so I can't hear you. I'm hoping that many of you are at least smiling. The fact is, when I show this clip, and I've showed this to thousands of people, everybody smiles or laughs at least a little bit, because laughter is natural. We can't help but laugh. And he's laughing because, and it makes it worse because he knows he's not supposed to be laughing, and that creates stress, and laughter is a response to stress. And so he's laughing to kind of suppress the stress, which creates, it becomes a self-fulfilling sort of a thing and creates more problems. But the fact is, when you hear laughter, you relax. Just listening to laughter helps you relax and feel safe. But we can also laugh on our own. Now, it's important to note that we don't need to be funny to laugh. There's a lot of people who hear, oh, laughter yoga, and it means I'm going to be funny. Unfortunately, I'm not a terribly funny person. And so I tell terrible dad jokes and nobody finds them funny. You know, a great example is I used to be against facial hair, but then it grew on me. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm coming from. So not so great. But I do laughter yoga. And laughter yoga started in 1995 in India. It was started by a doctor there, Madan Kataria. And Dr. Kataria was studying the effects of laughter and realized that we should laugh more. And so he started a laughter club. And he went to the park with his friends and they sat around and they told jokes. And that worked until somebody told that joke that made somebody upset. And what Dr. Kataria realized is that humor is culturally mediated. What I find funny versus what you will find funny are two completely different things. And so he said, well, do we need to have humor to laugh? And so when we actually go to the research, only 15% of laughter is caused by humor. The rest of laughter, 85%, is communication. And so what he realized is that we can use fake laughter, and fake laughter becomes real laughter, and then we get the benefits of doing it. So what I'm going to do is teach you a couple of really simple exercises that we can do together to help you laugh more. So again, this is going to be a little weird because I can't hear you and I can't see exactly what's going on there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to follow along with me here for a little bit. So we have to warm up our laughter. Laughter lives in different parts of our bodies. The hoes are down in our belly, the haws are in our chest, the hees are up here in our head. And so we're going to use our fingertips. And we're going to use our fingertips to warm up these laughter centers. So you're going to put your hands up and you're going to touch your thumbs together and you're going to go ho. And then you're going to go ho, ho. Then you're going to go ho, ho, ho. Then ho, 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 ho. See, you're going through all your fingers. Then you're going to go ho, 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 ho. Okay, and by this point, you've done all five. Now you're going to go like this. Hold on. You're going to go ho, 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 ho. Okay, you ready? Okay, let's do it all together. Ho, 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 ho. Okay, you got it? Let's do ha's. You ready? Thumbs, ha. Thumbs to pointer, ha, ha. Ha, ha, ha. Ha, 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 ha. Ha, 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 ha. You're all the way through again. Now we're going to go all the way through. Are you ready? We're going to go ha, 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 ha. Okay, one more. We're going to go he. And we're going to go he, he. He, he, he. He, 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 he. He, 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 he. And then we're going to go all the way through. We're going to go he, 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 he. Okay, you get the idea? It's easy. But what you do is you just do simple fake laughter, and the fake laughter turns to real laughter, and you're able to get the benefits of actually laughing. Now, I want to teach you one more before I go. And again, there's lots of exercises where you can learn to do this. If you go online onto YouTube, type in laughter yoga. There's tons of people who are way more weird than I am who will do all sorts of funny, weird things with you. But I would be really remiss if I didn't teach you how to turn yourselves on today. And I know that doesn't always sound right, but what I'm going to do is you have a key, and again, you have laughter motors. Let's see, you have laughter motors in your belly, your chest, and your head. And we're going to take our key and we're going to put it in our belly and we're going to turn it and we're going to go ho. And then you're going to turn it again and go ho. And then you're going to turn it again and go ho. And then you turn yourself on. Take your key, put it in your chest, go ha. Turn it again and go ha ha. Turn it one more time and go ha ha ha. Turn it one last time and turn yourself on. Okay, last one. Take your key, put it in your neck, go he. 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 And then turn yourself on. Okay. Hopefully you're laughing, or at least smiling. That is certainly my hope. It's hard to do this virtually to hear exactly what's going on, but my hope is that you've at least got a sense that you can do this. But it's important that we practice this. Now, in a typical laughter yoga session, we would do this for, 30 minutes, and we would lay around, and then at the end of a laughter yoga session, we actually do what's called a laughter meditation, where we lay on the ground and we just laugh for about 10 minutes. It's really one of the most delightful experiences. Unfortunately, this setup doesn't allow us to do that, but I would highly suggest that you look. There are laughter yoga clubs there in Hawaii. I've looked, and there are some. I'm happy to send the contact information for them. You can find laughter yoga on YouTube. The important thing is that you laugh more, because going back to what I said earlier, laughter induces the relaxation response, and laughter creates social connection. The two components of mental and physical health that we need to be truly thriving human beings. And laughter addresses both of them. Now, we're terrible at laughing. We're terrible at managing our mental health. But as my friend Jake said to Finn in Adventure Time, dude, sucking at something is the first step to being sort of good at something. We suck at relaxing. We actually are not very good at laughing either. We need to practice it more, but recognizing that we need to do this more and that we need to incorporate this more into our life is a starting point. Now, I know I'm a little bit over time, but I do want to end and state that if there's anything you've learned, and I would really highly suggest you go back and watch my talk from October, and then maybe come back and rewatch this one. The main lesson is that our body can calm our mind, and our mind can calm our body. They're inextricably intertwined, and one affects the other. So if your mind is feeling stressed out and chaotic, guess what? That's going to manifest in your body. If your body is sick, that's going to affect your mental health. They work together. A healthy mind leads to a healthy body, and a healthy body leads to a healthy mind. And laughter is one of those things that bridges that connection between the body and the mind. We need to recognize that we need people. We need to connect with people. And laughter is one of the easiest and most natural ways to do that. So please go forth, laugh more, be happy, be well, and thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you, thank you, thank you.